Hello, and thank you for joining us for this Vemotion webinar. We're not going to take up too much of your time, just half an hour. My name is Nick Damon. I am the partner manager for Vemotion. I have Chris Connor, who is our channel partner manager for police and local authority, and Dan Sharp beneath me, but only on this video and not in reality, who is our head of sales and support. Chris is going to run you through really how Vemotion can help you with solving antisocial behavior and fly tipping issues, and then Dan's going to run you through some of the highlights of what we can do and how the system works so well. So with that, hang on a second, and afterwards there will be a question and answer session. So please put your questions in the box on the left-hand side, and we'll aim to answer those at the end of the session. If you can't stay for the whole session, no problem, be recorded, you can watch it later. If you want to see it again, it's recorded, you can watch it later. But hopefully you'll enjoy the next 35 minutes, and with that, I'm going to hand you over to my very good colleague, Chris Connor.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this webinar. My name is Chris Connor, as previously introduced. I have worked in the CCTV, video surveillance, video management solutions, and cellular video systems for almost 20 years, both in the UK and around the world. So hopefully you're going to feel in pretty good hands as we go through the webinar today. To tell you a little bit about Vemotion, you may not have heard of us, but we are world leaders in cellular video transmission. Most of our key markets are blue lights, intelligence agencies, GCHQ, and the NCA. So we are trusted in the most sensitive environments. We also look after 32 other local authorities, both rural and inner city. So hopefully we've got some good experience that we can share with you guys today. Who are we and what do we do? In a nutshell, Vemotion delivers high quality live video even over the narrowest and most unreliable networks. What does that mean? It means even in the most difficult or the most remote environments, we will get a usable video signal back to you to give you critical situational awareness. So to tell you a little bit about who we are and our background, we're a UK company. We're based in Yorkshire. And we were incorporated in 2005. This is very important to remember. We are a telecoms company working in the CCTV space. So we have a joint ownership group with Teleware, who actually invented broadcast television over very, very low bandwidth GPRS back in the early 2000s. If you remember when you used to be able to get Sky Sports clips through on your mobile phone or Big Brother clips on your mobile phone, it was actually our technology that allowed us to deliver those services over cellular. We've got a global client base, police forces all over the world, the USA, Asia, Europe, the UK use our systems. And we have a global presence in the UK, France, the USA, and Singapore, where one of our largest client bases are. We've been key technical partners of Routers, CNBC, 3, Channel 4, and Bloomberg. So you're in very, very good hands when speaking with us. Who are we today? So we invented cellular video transmission over GPRS. Obviously, nobody uses GPRS anymore. Everything is 4G and 5G. So the bandwidths that we're able to work with are much more expanded. There are still certain restrictions when it comes to cellular transmission, and that is often to do with the bandwidth of the cell towers that are available in the area of the camera. Our systems are able to integrate into the vast majority of mainline VMS systems. So be it a Vigilon, be it Synectics, be it Indigo Vision, whatever front-end CCTV management software you are using, we are working with the vast majority of these systems. If you're a smaller council and maybe don't have a mainline VMS, we also have our own software which can integrate other people's cameras as well, so we can give you a low-cost ability to deploy CCTV very, very quickly and with great flexibility. So let's get on to the point why everybody's here today. Everybody on this call will have some type of responsibility in either environmental protection or street scene or neighbourhood ASBO problems. Okay, so in the UK last year, £58 million worth of taxpayers' money was lost to cleaning up fly tipping. There's 1,000 incidents for every 100,000 residents, and the average cleanup cost is £1,000. I was speaking to one rural council recently, and last year they spent £500,000 simply in clearing up fly tipping. When we look at antisocial behaviour, the cost is staggering. When it comes to antisocial behaviour, the numbers are even more striking. England and Wales are spending over 3.4 billion a year in cleaning up vandalism, damage from antisocial behaviour, and 17% of residents live under the continuous threat of ASB. Now, there are many measures in place that you guys use to tackle ASB, but the truth is 55% of all damage that falls under ASB is caused by 20% of reoffenders. So the key to reintroduce this fiscal budget into frontline services is higher prosecution rates. So we're certainly here to be able to help you with that. Now we move on to the benefits of cellular CCTV. They are vast and they are many. They are able to be completely flexible, both from a deployment point of view, but also from a budget point of view. You can cover many areas of interest, fly tipping hotspots, or antisocial behaviour hotspots with a single camera with one investment. These cameras are used temporarily for ASB and for fly tipping, and they can be hot swapped from any location to any location. There is a different side that cellular transmission can give you as well. Not only can it be a temporary fix to a waste management problem or an ASB problem, but it also allows you to expand the static coverage of your surveillance systems without the need for expensive infrastructure. Instead of having to dig up roads, run fibre cables, you simply put a cellular camera and it allows you to view in places where you've never been able to view before. We're going to talk about our pole cam a little later in the presentation, but our police customers and our intelligence agencies don't use our pole cam, they use our encoders. Now, what these encoders allow them to do is, if, for instance, there is a static CCTV system somewhere without a network connection on the edge of where your normal coverage is, maybe it's a gatehouse in a park, maybe it's a remote location without network infrastructure. You simply put one of our little cellular encoders in, and we can pull that video back through to your mainline via VMS or the software that we can supply. What this allows for is vastly reduced crime, safer communities, cleaner environments, and the key things here is we bring up your prosecution rates. We provide greater fine revenue, and this money is then allowed to be siphoned back into frontline services. Sounds great, right? There are challenges with cellular CCTV, otherwise everyone would be using it. Traditional cellular CCTV, it can be unreliable, and we'll talk about why technically it's unreliable in a later slide. The data costs are very hard to manage, which often means if you've bought a cellular system before, you've been good for the first 1 year or 2 years because you have a fixed cellular contract, but year 3, your operational costs can spike. We'll talk about how we can work around those issues for you and deliver a solution that is both practical and delivers great value. And the truth is, traditional CCTV can let you down in crucial moments. Some of the people on the call today will be from inner city, local authorities, some will be from rural. But if you have a camera deployed near a football stadium, for instance, on a Saturday afternoon, with the volume of data traffic around a football stadium, the first thing that you will lose is your cellular video feed. Again, we're going to talk about why that happens with traditional CCTV and why it doesn't happen with Vemotion cellular CCTV. So I promised I wasn't going to get too technical today, but what I have done is prepared a couple of slides that I think illustrate the problems with traditional IP CCTV when the same rules and architecture are applied to cellular CCTV. So the way normal IP CCTV works is you have your VMS, you have your video software platform, you're pulling videos through on your phone. It goes out to the IoT, the cloud, the Internet of Things, over, a stable broadband connection or a VPN. Goes to the router. The router forwards the request for video onto the DVR or to the camera or to the mobile video platform, and it sends it back to the VMS. Now, in the DVR, you'll have a little bit of encoding, a little bit of compression for the recording to maximize your hard drive space, but it doesn't compress the video while sending video. Now, this is absolutely fine on an ADSL connection or a fiber connection. This works perfectly. The problem with most cellular CCTV is that they take the exact same principles and they put it into cellular communications. And remember, we're a cellular company, we're a telecoms company. We're not a CCTV company, we just work in this space. So in the same way that the VMS, the software, the app on the phone requests video, if this was going straight through to the router, there'd be no problem. But we've introduced a cell tower. Now, cell towers have different bandwidth availability at different times of the day, depending on the network traffic that's around. It also prioritizes different forms of data streams over others. So often data-heavy video signals will actually be the first thing that it loses. So what will happen is the VMS will ask the DVR or the camera for its 2 megapixel, its 4K video. The camera will try and send that 2 megapixel or 4K video, but the cell tower won't be able to accommodate that. So what will happen is the video signal will be lost, okay? Because the VMS isn't talking to the cell tower, it's talking directly to the router. So what will happen is the VMS will continue to ask for that video to be provided, and the router will keep trying to give it. And that creates crosstalk and network chatter, which means that the camera will never reconnect until there is more available bandwidth to it, which can leave you with a lack of critical coverage at increasingly important times. What it also does is, because the DVR or the camera isn't compressing the video, this creates huge costs from a data usage point of view. It's not optimized for cellular in any way. It's just throwing the same 2 megapixel, 4 megapixel video feed and the data cost that will be attached to that. So why Vemotion? Again, I'm not going to get too technical, but I've put some slides together which will demonstrate that our architecture is built from a cellular perspective and not from a CCTV VMS perspective. So what you will notice in this slide is that all of our data traffic moves from the camera and our encoder back to the VMS. It's not the VMS requesting video and a router sending it in an uncompressed format. What our encoder does is constantly ping the cell tower to understand what the available bandwidth is to it, and it will dynamically shift the video feed that it sends to always stay underneath that threshold. What that allows us to do is two things. It allows us to always maintain a steady video feed without any fear of being kicked off the cell tower. But what that also does is allow us to manage our data costs. Now, a lot of our client base is actually in the USA. Now, in the UK, data can be fairly cheap. We see consumer data offers on television all the time, okay? In America, that's not the case. Data is very expensive. So what we're also able to do in our encoders and our cameras is limit the amount of data that is being sent to stay under any thresholds that you may have in your cellular contracts. Now, a nice thing about our system as well is we don't need any specific SIM cards. We can use the ones you're already using. You may already have systems on an APN. We can use the exact same SIM cards, but it doesn't need to have a static IP address, because when we send our video, our encoder is pinging our server, which has a static IP address. Again, the architecture for this is almost back to front of the way that CCTV works. And it allows us to never drop our video feed. Now, of course, cell towers can go down. That is out of our control. But if it does, we will automatically connect without the network cross chatter, which causes other systems to freeze and fail. So with our systems, you can deploy them anywhere without any restriction. Okay, you can drop them in, you can move them on. Obviously, with fly tipping hotspots, they tend to move from location to location. So with one purchase of a camera, you can follow that, you can pull number plates, you can get prosecutions. Few prosecutions, you know, you're going to take care of obviously the problem. Because we're constantly pinging the cell tower, we've got incredibly efficient video compression, and we will always deliver the very, very best video quality for the available bandwidth. It might not always be 4K, it might not always be 2 megapixel, but it will always be better than anything else that can sit on the network. What that allows us to do as well is control those data costs, as we touched on earlier. A byproduct of that efficient compression is that we have ultra low latency. Now, what that means is when you move the camera, there is almost no drag and no delay, allowing you to be able to view critical information in real time as it happens without the video dropping out. Moving away from our pole cam, our encoders are super flexible. So if you've got a remote location with some old analog cameras, you can put our encoder on it, we'll bring it back to your VMS. If you've got some IP cameras, we can put it on there, we'll bring it back to your VMS. We can expand the footprint of your system with very, very little expenditure from you guys. If the cell tower ever does go down, as soon as it comes up, because we're continually sensing the cell tower, we will automatically connect to the system. It won't be the case of the VMS trying to pull through video which isn't available. So we connect straight away while the systems don't. You can expand the edge of your video surveillance with very, very little expenditure. Certainly no civil works, certainly no fiber backbones. You drop a camera in wherever you need it, you've got eyes in that location, further away than you could ever have imagined. We are agnostic when it comes from a SIM card point of view. You can put any SIM card in there. What we would say is there are different qualities and different bandwidths of SIM cards. So as long as you're using a tier 1 SIM, you're going to get the very, very best video quality possible. And we've got a fully developed client-server architecture. Again, no static IPs in your SIM cards. We've got our own software, and we'll integrate into your VMS. It couldn't be easier to use from our perspective. So we're going to show you the pole cam now. So the pole cam is used by 32 other councils, and it delivers fantastic results. This is what the unit looks like. It's our mini pole cam. It's under 3.5 kilos, so it can be hung on any street furniture, any lighting columns, anywhere that you may wish to deploy that. Fantastic for fly tipping, to combat ASBO zones and shop fronts where things may be happening, or even residential properties where there are problem neighbours and the anguish that can cause wider communities. You may recognise the camera on the right hand side. This is the 360 Vision Predator. We actually manufacture their transmission collar for their TX unit, which is their wireless system. Now, the Predator TX is often used in very remote locations, but for static installs. The pole cam is a lighter weight product that you can move from location to location. We can transmit over 2G, 3G, 4G, and even satellite, and we'll fully integrate into your existing control room. Whatever we stream, we will record in high definition locally within the camera. And moving back to the data usage, it's so much lower than what our competitors use with heavy data bandwidth based on a traditional CCTV model. So your cost of ownership is hugely reduced over the lifetime of a product. So that's my little presentation done. I thank you all for your time. I'm going to pass you over to Dan now, and he's going to do a quick technical demonstration for you. He's going to show you the software, and he's going to show you the different video qualities at different bandwidths that we can dynamically shift through in our software. So Dan, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. And now I'm going to show you the Vemotion viewer. in all its glory. So as you can see, we've logged in as usual, and we've selected one of our online encoders, which is highlighted in green. You can see that lower down we have the offline ones also. So first of all, if we hover over the image, we'll get this grey bar at the top. We're going to pin this, and this shows us our live kilobits per second and also the currently selected stream. If we right click on the image, we can select one of our pre-selected profiles, which we can change on the fly at any time. So we can go down really low, or we can go really high, and at the click of a button, that's done. So we'll stay around here at the moment. As we can see, we've got our pan, tilt, and zoom, which can be done by clicking the screen. The closer we click to the center, the slower it moves. The further, the quicker. Something to note. And then obviously with the scroll wheel, we can zoom. If you don't want to use your mouse for that, we can select down here, and on the left hand side we have the old school controls. One of the new features that we have with our new pole cam and the Linux going forward is if we have a second encoder on the device, we can select a same camera again, but what we can do is if we digitally zoom on this second one, we can select an area of interest, which can come in handy when we are trying to keep an eye on an area of interest while maintaining an overview of the general area of which the camera can do. So what we can then do with the second encoder is we can turn on digital zoom, and we can zoom in on an area of interest that we want to focus on while still maintaining an overview of the general area. Now this can be useful for many of customers with regards to fly tipping or antisocial behavior, or if they just want a better look of a certain area, maybe a number plate or a vehicle, to see if there's something going on untoward that shouldn't be. And this doesn't affect the second view, so we can still see what's going on. And if we turn that off, we can then put that image back to normal without any issue. With regards to playback as well, what we can now do is we've now got the ability to rewind and pause live. So if we rewind, we can see that car come back, and then we can pause. And then what we can do with that pause is we can then digitally zoom and get a better image of that vehicle and potentially get the number plate. So we can do all that, and then once we've got what we need, we can go back to resuming live without any issue whatsoever. And that doesn't affect our recordings, which we can still get as usual without any issue. We then also have focused on live events. So we've got events now, whether it be events for motion detection, for alarming of sensors, tamper sensors, anything that the camera can send via an on-off alert, we can now feed through our viewer and we can have in here. So for instance, we can select recordings and we can go to play, and we can see that that is now a recording of the past, and we can see the car that was there before. We can also then pause that, and we can digitally zoom in again. We can get information that we want from the vehicle or anything else. What we can also do is we can also bookmark these events manually. We can put in a bookmark if there's something of interest happened, and we can download the last minute or the last 3 minutes, and we can bookmark it, or we can download and bookmark it. Okay, and then lastly, we do now have, as you can see, if we go into the settings, we do have a dark theme. So if this is going in a control room or something like that, where they don't want a bright blaring screen in the face, they can turn that into dark mode, and it'll give you this nice dark edge rather than the bright white. As you can see here, I have set up a mosaic. So using the viewer, you can select lots of different grid sizes. So here we've gone with a 4x4, and as you can see 4 different cameras on this. And obviously if we select the image, we can still PTZ all the cameras that have the ability to PTZ without any issue. We can individually control the stream quality of each of these images as independent, so we can have them on any selection we want. And we can also see the high resolution versus the lower resolutions there. What we can also do is on the individual streams themselves with the Linux software is we can create quads or 9 views in the actual image itself. So you will lose the functionality of PTZ, however, you can see more images in one stream itself, and we can put that up to a 9 view also. And we can have those down to also a picture in picture, which what that will do is if we change that to dev one is we can see that in a picture-in-picture, we maintain the previous image in the top left-hand corner, but we now have a large view that we can PTZ. So in one image, so if we change this to just a one grid, we can see that we've got the picture-in-picture of the previous camera. We can see what's going on in that one, while we can still maintain PTZ and control of this one, which is a handy little feature, which means that the customer doesn't always have to have a second encoder on the same unit. They can have just one encoder and have this neat little picture-in-picture and be able to see what's going on in their other camera while still maintaining control of this camera. Lastly, we need to talk about the bandwidth and the abilities of the Vemotion software itself. So as we know, the networks that these cameras are running on are not always exceptionally good. 4G is not always fantastic, and neither is 5G. So in those times when things are fantastic, we can have an image like this where we can go up to, on this camera, 1080p. We can take in 2K and 4K cameras. That's not an issue for us in our Linux operation anymore. And we can see we've got a lovely image, but that is using a lot of bandwidth. We're at 2.5 megasecond, okay? And the network might not always be able to handle that. So obviously the Vemotion software will step down automatically, but you might want to do that yourself anyway, just to save data costs. So these are pre-configured. However, you can have any of these you like. You can set up your own. That's not an issue. So we can go down to 600 kilobits a second here, which we can see that after a second, the image stabilizes as it's not sending the data that's not changing. So we're using a lot less, and that'll keep reducing over time. But we can go down as low as one frame at 20 kilobits a second. Now it's quite a blocky image, but if you're having issues with your network, you can see that that is perfectly an image that can be used to sense if there's motion, if there's something going on, if there's something happening in that scene. You're going to be able to know what that is, and you're using 20 kilobits a second, which is absolutely nothing on your network. So which also means that we go so low as to, so you don't get a black image. You still maintain a picture no matter what the quality of your network, as long as there is still at least 20 kilobits. And that about sums it up, and over to Nick.
Thanks, Dan. We got a few questions that came in during the course of the conversation with Chris and everything else. First question is quite a common question actually. The units, do they use data when I'm not actually viewing it?
So if you are using the Vemotion viewer solely, then no. If you're not viewing a camera, then it is not transmitting any data, thus you're not using any of your allowance on your SIM or any cost. However, if you are integrating our product into a VMS, then more than likely yes, because the VMS is viewing the camera at all times.
Okay. Second question is, and I think this is partially answered, perhaps we should expand it a little bit more. Can I use my own camera with Vemotion encoders and equipment?
Yes, you can. And although the technology itself is a dying breed, as it were, you can use analog cameras as well as IP cameras with Vemotion. We support up to 4K cameras, so we can do 4K cameras, 2K, HD, full HD, or lesser. And as a general rule of thumb, we say as long as it spits out an ONVIF stream and can be viewed in ONVIF Device Manager, for example, it'll work with us.
Yeah, and I think something else that needs to be stressed is we do have the ability to connect multiple input cameras of different types into the same encoder,
yes.
The same box, and they have multiple encoders. So there's a lot of flexibility. Can you expand that a little bit, Dan?
Yes. So with some of our competitors, it's a case of it's one hardware unit per camera. However, with Vemotion, you can have, depending on the unit you choose from us, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, and realistically, that number goes up to whatever it is. We don't have a hard limit of how many cameras can go into a unit with our software on it. And the function that gives you is, for example, if you had 4 cameras on one unit, you can view all 4 of those in a quad and have a second encoder that then you select one camera. So for example, maybe there's some antisocial behavior going on, you want to PTZ that particular camera, but you don't want to lose sight of what's going on in your other 3 cameras. You have that ability to be able to do with the Vemotion. You can have multiple encoders on one unit, which gives you the ability to do multiple views.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, of course, we are always recording, aren't we, on the hard
yes,
drive?
we record locally at source quality. So that means that if your camera is 1080p, then we record at that 1080p value. And if GDPR is a concern, you can set that to store for a certain number of days. So for example, if we by default, our poll cams record on a terabyte hard drive and they store that for 30 days continuous, and then it overrides the oldest. So you've always got a moving 30 days of footage recorded locally. You can, of course, if you're using a VMS, still record via VMS, but that's going to record at the quality that you're streaming at, which might not always be the highest due to bandwidth limitations. Whereas with the Vemotion, you've always got that source and you can download that remotely as well.
Cool. This is kind of a pertinent question. I don't know who put this on. Go on. Given the current news, what happens if there's a power cut? Because of course, power cuts used to be quite rare, but we're being threatened with them, aren't we, during the course of the next...
Yes, so all Vemotion units are set to boot on power, meaning that as soon as they receive power, they start up and the software automatically starts running. So it means that, if you do have a power cut, you're not having to send an engineer to site or, pay for a cherry picker to go pull and restart anything. As soon as power comes back, the unit comes back up online and starts streaming automatically, and you're back to life.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'd just like to add to that as well is if, for example, because we're using SIMs and sometimes cell towers do go down, if that happens, you still have the fallback that we are still recording, at least. So you might not be able to view live because of a network outage, but at least you've still got recorded footage. So if you miss something live, you can at least go back and you've still got that recorded footage.
Cool. And the final question I have, in case we get any more in, it doesn't look like it. The final question I have is, I think Chris may have answered this, it may come in beforehand, but just to reiterate, can I use any SIM cards or do I have to use Vemotion SIM cards?
No, you can use any and all SIM cards. The one caveat I will say to that is we have had customers in the past that have decided to buy their own SIM cards, which is not a problem at all, but they have gone for the ones that you see on TV where it's 3 or EE and it's unlimited data. They're not aimed at business, they are commercial SIMs. And what you find is that those SIMs, EE3 or O2 and all those, they don't expect you to use all that data unlimited. They don't expect you to use it all the time, which is why they offer it so cheap. So what you find with those ones is that they do then end up throttling your bandwidth considerably, and you've got a very poor download and upload speed. So just make sure that you are going for a business SIM, which will mean you pay a bit more, but it means that they won't take your bandwidth away from you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Dan. Well, nothing else has come in, so I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something. A recording of this will be available, so you can distribute it to other people within your organization, or even your best friend, or even your family. What a Christmas treat. Well, don't watch Strictly Come Dancing Christmas Day. Watch the Vemotion webinar again. So thank you all for joining. We'll hope you can now successfully just select no end of Vemotion products. But thanks very much. Thanks, Dan. Thanks to Chris, who had to get off. He's driving to Scotland right now, actually. My name is Nick Damon, and hopefully we will be seeing you and talking to you about Vemotion products again in the very near future. Thanks very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.